which are going to use poles and oars to row the next boat out of the predetermined space.
And then what you have to do, you then have to lay your stringers and your planking.
Not yet.
Before you can position the next pot.
Well, you've got to anchor that boat first. Then you put your bulks down. Those are your horizontal, basically your stringers. Then you lay down your boards. Then you put another stringer down over top to hold the boards down. Then you can row the next boat out and go do the whole thing. Very time consuming. A good engineer crew can do it. They could have probably bridged this in 2 or 3 hours if they weren't under fire, but now they're under fire. Let me read the official after action report from one of the engineer officers. Where basically there was a battalion of United States engineers, a regular Army, and 2 regiments of New York volunteer engineers. Those 2 regiments were in the Volunteer Engineer Brigade under the command of a Brigadier General. I've already mentioned him. His name is Woodbury.
He's now been released from arrest.
This is the report of the commander of the regular battalion, Cyrus Comstock, Chief Engineer of the Army of the Potomac. The heads of bridge trains arrived on the bank of the river about 3 a.m. as proposed. At the bridge thrown by Lieutenant Cross, the material was unloaded and then moved by hand about 200 yards to the bank of the river. At the bridge just above, the material was unloaded on the bank of the river 250 yards above the place of the bridge and floated down. At 8:15 a.m., this bridge was practicable for infantry and that of Lieutenant Cross half over, when the parties were fired on by 2 companies of the enemy, who were, however, soon driven away by the fire of the artillery and infantry covering the bridges. Meanwhile, at Fredericksburg, nearly all the material had been unloaded, a part on the edge of the river and a part on the plateau above, 100 yards from it. And one bridge at the upper and one at the lower end of the town were halfway across, when at 6 a.m., a sharp musketry fire was opened on them from houses and other cover in the city, driving the men from the bridges. Our artillery at once opened on the town, and during the morning, several unsuccessful attempts were made to go on with the bridges. There had been a thick haze all morning, often making distinct vision impossible at distances greater than 400 to 500 yards. This lifted above 3 p.m. This lifted before 3 p.m., rendering effective artillery possible. At that time, a heavy fire was concentrated on the houses around the bridgeheads, and under its cover, men were thrown across in pontons. The enemy sharpshooters captured or driven away, and the bridges completed. If it had not been for the haze, this might have been effected in the morning. So they start at 3 in the morning, and they don't finish till after 3 in the afternoon.
Now, Cross commands a regular battalion. They're working down with Franklin's Crossing.
But he's also reporting on the troops that are up here.
But actually, the regular battalion has had more experience. And he's reporting up here. Because Cross, down where Franklin is, there's very little opposition.
There's only 2 companies down there at the lower bridge crossing site. There's 3. There's one about half-mile downriver.
And the opposition is either at the upper crossing or at the middle crossing.
At the middle crossing, correct.
Any questions?
Yeah, why didn't they start laying the pontons earlier? Because you got like 14 hours of darkness this time of year?
Good question. Why didn't they send the troops over ahead of time, too?
Because they're using the pontons as landing craft come when they fail in the conventional way. Caesar legions crossed the Rhine River, which is a hell of a lot bigger river than the Rappahannock, back in before Christ. And they're not that much different than these bridges. So from the time of Caesar's legions, Caesar Augusta particularly, the pontons were the same as they are now. And they were crossing the Rhine, which is a hell of a lot more formidable than the Rappahannock.
Anybody have any more questions?
They take horses and artillery across on these? Or
Yes,
just
they
foot
could.
soldiers?
They could take horses and artillery across. Now, down at the lower bridge crossings, when they threw up that third bridge, that was only wide enough for infantry only. And when they retreat back across the river after the Battle of Fredericksburg, they threw down straw and dirt to muffle the sounds of the horses and the artillery coming rumbling back, because they didn't want the enemy to know that they were pulling out.
Did they retrieve the
Yes, they did retrieve them.
Yeah, because you want to retrieve them. Now, in the Western Army, they had their pontons were of Goodyear rubber, circular in shape, and you had to pump them up with a belt, but they were easier to transport than these.
Before we board back in the bus, I want you to try and use your imagination.
You got a question about
in the back?
Oh, yes, sir.
It's a question why they didn't cross the Han River the night before with rubber boats. And the engineers came and built this, then the Marines came across the bridge.
And again, you don't play a band when you're crossing these, because everybody's in step and the bridge will break up.
It was Baldy Smith, in command of the 6th Corps, that rode up to the band director as they were playing, as Franklin's division's crossing, and said, "You damn fool, you're about to swamp the bridge. Stop that racket." Use your imagination, though, to figure out what's going on here on the morning of the 11th. There are staff officers running back and forth. You've got commissary officers right here issuing food. You've got ordnance officers requisitioning ammunition, issuing ammunition. You have your chief surgeon here. You have Signal Corps. You've got a Beardsley Telegraph communicating with the other grand divisions along the line. You've got Balloon Corps in this area. They're sending balloons aloft to report on enemy dispositions on the other side of the river. There's a lot of activity going on here. And remember, the man in overall command is brand new. Brand new commander of the Army of the Potomac, Ambrose Burnside. A reluctant commander who only takes command to prevent Joe Hooker, as he already pointed out.
But he wasn't here.
He
Is that
was
what you said?
down the way.
Yeah, he was not here. His headquarters was at the Phillips house.
He's up at the Phillips house, which is a long 2/3 of a mile.
This is Sumner's Right Grand Division that's here. This is his headquarters. But Burnside is here a lot. He comes up here a lot. He's got great observation.
Now, when we're on day 3, when we're on the 13th, Couch is running the attack ashore against Marie's Heights. And he is in the cupola of the City Hall, which we can see the finial above it. And that is where he can see what's happening to his men. He says, oh my God, see how my poor men fall. Because if in your Union Army you're going to lose 8,000 men here, and you're only going to lose 4,200 men down on Franklin's front.